Hi, my name is Fred Bofling. I'm the president and CEO of Race Across America, and this is the OhioRAAM Show.
Well, thank you, Fred Bofling, for that introduction. We appreciate having you do that. We caught you over at the crew seminars in Columbus, Ohio, and you were able to give us that little boost along the way. And we want to thank all the RAM crew, the people there in Boulder, Colorado, for the support and encouragement you have given the show over the years. We appreciate that a great deal. And this is the OhioRAAM Show, coming to you from Southwest Ohio, where we are sponsored by the first two time stations in Ohio, time stations 41 at Oxford, Ohio, and time stations 42 at Blanchester, Ohio, these time stations for the Race Across America. And these time stations are open 24 hours a day, where you'll have 24-hour food, 24-hour fuel, 24-hour fans. These are great places for people to come and see the race, because there's always going to be other like-minded people there. There's always something going on, even if there's not a racer passing by at the moment. There will often be crew there, there'll be officials there, there'll be media coming by, and there'll be other people sharing stories from past Rams, having a great time. So if you live anywhere in the Midwest area, the tri-state area, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, we'd be glad to have you drop into either one of these time stations and become acquainted with the race. There's some of you out there who've just now started hearing about the Race Across America, like to learn more about it. Hey, come out to the time stations and you'll soon become a dedicated fan. We want to talk about some of the people at time stations 41 in Oxford, Ohio. The captain there is Jim Lawyer, and a couple other people that have meant a lot to the development of the time station are Lisa Brunkhorst and Linda Williams. There's so many more, and we'll mention them later on, but we'll mention them as we go along. The time stations in both of these locations are located adjacent to the McDonald's restaurant. So if you get into Oxford, you get into Blanchester, just ask somebody, where's the McDonald's restaurant, and you get there and you'll find us for sure. The times that we're going to be open this year are from June the 21st to the 25th. We'll begin 24-hour operations on the 21st, and that'll continue on through the 25th. If it should happen that some of the racers are way out ahead, as they have in years past, we'll open for those, but we'll begin round-the-clock operations on the 21st. There are other time stations. You see the picture of them here. We're not going to leave it up very long because we want to get on to the show. But if you'll go to the OhioRAAMShow.com website, you'll see a link there that will lead you to the staffed time stations around across the nation. While we're talking about the OhioRAAMShow.com website, we've added a couple of things, or we should say updated them. We now have the updated 2016 rule book there. There's a link there for that. And we also have the updated 2016 projected arrivals at the 55 time stations across the nation. So be sure to check that out. You can click on those. You can print them out if you wish. Hello again, my name's Lee Kreider. I host the show. We are now approaching our fourth birthday of the OhioRAAM Show. And this is show number 118. Hard to believe. We've been here 4 years and we've done 118 shows. And on the 118th show, we're going to go down to Atlanta, Georgia to visit with Ray Brown, who is scheduled to race in the Race Across America 2016 version, a solo male in the age 50 to 59 category. And so with that, we're going down to Atlanta, Georgia, and Ray Brown. How are you today, Ray? How's everything down there?
Awesome. Everything's starting to blossom. The cherry trees are all in bloom. This is the best time of year to be in Atlanta. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm doing well too. Thanks for asking, Lee.
Okay, and we're recording this on the 22nd of March. It's going to be a couple weeks delay before we get you out there, but we're glad to have you with us today, Ray. And I want to just give a shout out to our common good friend, Jim Lawyer, who pestered me. It didn't take too much pestering, but he prompted me to reach out to you, Ray, and get you on the show. We had a little glitch a couple weeks ago, and those kind of things happen. But Ray, tell me a little about yourself, just in general, before we get into cycling too much.
Sure. I'll take it back a little ways. Been married, actually celebrated our 27th wedding anniversary last week. No children. Thanks. But, my wife is, might sound stale and cliched, but she's almost more my friend, my best friend than my wife. We're really, really close. I started out from Chicago originally. Went to Northern Illinois, was a CPA finance background, took several companies public during my tenure in my business career. So I was fortunate enough to kind of cash out at an early age. I actually retired at 35 and then was bored out of my mind, started to have conversations with my dog, and he was replying. So I thought it was time to get back in the workforce. So I got involved in turnaround situations where me and a group of investors would look at distressed companies, and quite honestly, the more messed up they were, the more fun it was to try and turn them around and, immediately stop the hemorrhaging and get them cash flow positive and then try to sell them. So in 2009, my last one I did out of Chicago, I sold to Berkshire Hathaway to Warren Buffett's company.
I was going to say, I think I've heard of that company somewhere.
They had a division. I was running a furniture rental company that was in 26 states, and Warren Buffett has a company called Court that does all kind of furniture rental as well. And they ultimately, first they had no interest in the business when it was until we got it turned around, and then I was there about a year and a half and turned it around where it was successful enough that they said, okay, we'll buy it, because they were tired of us bumping into them. We were a gnat on the elephant, and they wanted us to go away. So after that, I kind of went back into triathlon. It was my true love. I did Kona in '97. I had done a ton of triathlons, got back into it 2009, 2010. Went back to Kona in 2010, and unfortunately I got run over by a course marshal during the race just outside Hawaii. Course marshal turned around on a motorcycle, and I hit him square in the engine block doing about 30 miles an hour on a descent. It really destroyed my shoulder, my right shoulder, and I had a bunch of head injuries, and thought, well, this is it. My tri career is over, when there's a real well-known doctor down here who's done a ton of surgery, shoulder surgeries on pro athletes. And after the surgery, he said, well, you've got the shoulder of an 80-year-old man now. You'll never be able to swim again. And I felt like I'd been diagnosed with cancer, This is it. And I'd always loved the bike. So I tried to make lemonade out of the lemon, if you will. And in 2013, Lee, I decided, Ironman distance was, 112 miles. I always thought, it's kind of a joke. And, but it's a big difference trying to save yourself to get off and run a marathon. So you're always holding back and, never wanting to break that anaerobic threshold, if you will, off the bike. So I decided on a lark, I'll try this. I only did the 200-mile one the first time, but I actually went to a place here in Atlanta called Columns Drive. It's a 2.5-mile road, flat as a pancake. And I rode 150 there as a test. So I went back and forth on this 2.5-mile road for 150 miles. And I said, hey, I think I can do this. This is okay. So I went down there. It was cold as heck for it being Florida in November. But I took third, and then I was just kind of enamored with cycling. I really fell in love with it. I absolutely love the bike to begin with. I kid around with my wife when it's time for me to go. Please put all the bikes in the casket with me, and I'll be a happy man. Because it's just I can't stand a day where I miss, to be quite honest. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I decided in 2014 that I'd like to try and qualify for RAAM, looking at it much longer term. And so I did RAAM Minnesota. I finished third there as well. The guy who's doing RAAM solo this year, Rob Ferris, he took first. The guy just smoked the course. It's like no one even knew the guy, and he just blistered it. I think he beat me by about 5 hours. But so then I qualified, and then I went to Mid-Atlantic. I took second place at Mid-Atlantic on a 24-hour time trial. That was my first 24-hour TT. I did 468 miles, and I was I had no crew. I crewed myself.
Wow.
So I lost by 3 miles to a kid 30 years younger than me, and I had no crew. I mean, I literally was making my own pit stops and everything else. Making my own juice and everything as I came in. That's an awesome race as well. It's one of my favorites. Melissa does a fantastic job with that race. The race became a qualifier 2 years ago, and they've done a really good job of growing it as well. And Melissa is just she puts her heart and soul into the race. Just an awesome race director. So I've always struggled with that one because I've been dying to do Hoodoo, but it's always the same weekend.
Yeah.
And I've always said, well, I'll try to do Hoodoo, but I can't pass up Melissa's race. And then I did Silver State 2 years ago. Caught pneumonia during the night. It was one of those. It was the first time that it moved from Death Valley, and so it went from 90s during the day down in the 20s at night. I think it was in third or fourth at the time, and then kind of all hell broke loose, and I got sicker than a dog during the night. I did finish 10th, and then immediately went to the hospital where I was diagnosed with pneumonia. And so I went back this year, hell bent that, or in 2015, that I would atone for it. And I actually, courtesy of Adam Bickett and his wife, and a wonderful a woman by the name of Trish Shervogel, were my crew, and I finished third. I was actually, I think, about 45 minutes out of first. So for an old man, I'm 58, I was pretty elated.
Yeah,
and that's what I find so enjoyable about these. There's not a whole lot of young bucks in it, like Adam, as an example. Adam Bickett is a rare breed because so many of these people are so much older. Quite honestly, everybody else has a job and a career, family just starting and stuff. So it's tough for young people to be involved versus most of us who are retired and have the time to train. So what it does is it enables me to do okay on these. I think other than the pneumonia bout that I had at Silver State, I've finished no worse than third in any of the races I've done. And that's third overall.
That raises an interesting question, and I don't know that you have the answer to it, but I've thought about this a lot. It seems to me, does it appear to you that when it comes to these endurance events, like the longer distance cycling events, that persons who are a bit older than the, quote, prime of life, unquote, seem to do better at them? I know, just speaking for myself, I was at my best, very best, at age 60.
Wow.
And part of that is probably what you say, is you had more time to train and give to it at those ages. But it just seems to me that I once looked, I think the sweet spot for winning RAM used to be, I'll have to say, used to be about 45. Now with a couple of these young guys coming out of Switzerland and Austria, they've kind of blown that average out of the water. But I don't know. Have you ever thought about that?
No, Lee, you're dead on with it. I think what's happened is I think there's a big migration going on in ultra as well. It seems, because I hadn't been involved with it that long, but I talked to some of the godfathers like a Paul Carpenter, who really is who I learned everything from, because he was a professor at Northern, and then we had that in common at Northern Illinois. So when I reached out to try and find out about ultra cycling, Paul just happened to be the one I reached to because I had that common tie, and he would write me tomes of emails, about trying to learn this stuff. So he is kind of like my godfather when it comes to ultra cycling. But it is true. I think you see more and more younger people getting into it, remarkably younger and faster.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are just, it's nosebleed, the pace that they're able to hold now. But one of the things, I've had so many people approach me, like when I first qualified, they said, well, so, I'd done the 24-hour race, and another guy who had qualified said, so are you doing RAM in 2015? And I said, not a chance. And he said, why not? And I said, you can't cheat endurance. You can't shortcut this.
That's right.
You've got to have that build. And, I remember he scoffed at me and he said, 8 months is plenty of time. And I thought to myself, 8 months, bud, 8 months is nothing. I mean, I've got 25 years of I've run 21 marathons. I did 9 Ironmans. I can't tell you how many sprints or half Ironmans I've done. You just can't cheat this stuff. And it's the development of all that, just as you're saying, Lee, that is what is that build. And I think there's a couple things. There's a maturity level as well, right, where you look at it and say, wow, these guys just took off like a bat out of hell. I got to go after them. Well, in reality, they're all coming back to you.
That's true. And I think part of it, Ray, maybe, and I just speculating here, and this subject, we didn't discuss it ahead of time. And I don't know why I'm getting so much light on maybe it's that paper there, but we didn't discuss this ahead of time. But I think as you age, you get to know your body better.
Yes.
You get to know what it can do, what it can't do, when you need to take a break, when you need to give it a rest, when's time to push, when's time to ease up, those kind of things. And that only comes with years of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny when I had a really bad crash back in October, and I hit a guardrail on a descent, and I ended up being ambulanced to the hospital and everything. And the doctor's in there, and he's saying, well, you're passing out because you're dehydrated. And I said, dehydrated? I said, not a chance. And he said, I'm telling you, we put 2 IVs in you are dehydrated. And I said, Doc, I appreciate what you're saying, but I know dehydration, and there is no way I was dehydrated. I had this 17-pound contusion on me. But they just kind of scoff.
That's where all your liquid was, right?
Exactly. It all went there. But you are right. You get to where you're really intimate with your body. If something's off. If you're on. It's remarkable. I can generally guess. I'm not one of these maniacs who says my resting heart rate's 34 or anything like that. But I know when I'm elevated or when I'm okay. You just get that intimacy, exactly as what you bring up. That's an absolutely just great point, because it's the way I'm training right now. I was in Borrego the last 2 weeks, and my focus was on my strategy really for RAM is let the course offer what it offers, and I'm going to take that. I'm not going to destroy one of the climbs at the start or Wolf Creek Pass or any of those things. I'm going to take those easy and where the opportunity lies on the flats, I'm going to take advantage of those rather than desperately trying to recover. And so I've been focusing on, I'm a power nut. And so I train religiously with a power meter, as well as never forgetting my heart rate. And so the whole time I was out there, I was almost like on cruise control. I rode all the way to Blythe on my own, unsupported, and came back. And it was very tempting at times with the wind to fly, but I knew I was going to face those winds on the way back. And so I just locked down and said, I'm going to go at this. All I have is a heartbeat of 110. And that's what I did the whole time. So it's exactly what you're saying, Lee.
Well, Ray, in your bio stuff you sent me before, you mentioned something, and I'm not familiar with this. I suppose this shows my ignorance, but you mentioned about Everesting. What's that all about?
It's become an absolute fascination with me. It's kind of funny. I did one yesterday on the trainer of all things. I'm very active on a virtual software package called Zwift. These guys out of the UK designed this package, and it is just, the realism is eerie. And so they just built a mountain route, and that's my tie with Jim Lawyer, by the way, Lee. He is very active out there with Zwift, and it's really a great family of it could be people just starting out, it could be veterans.
Let me interrupt you, Ray, just to say that Jim Lawyer, he's been a good friend of mine for a number of years, and he is the captain of Time Station 41 at Oxford, Ohio, which we've talked about before the show started, and really great guy.
Yeah, I'm actually, it'll be awkward, but I hope to God I can make it to Ohio to give him a hug.
I don't know that Jim will like that too much.
That's okay. I'll embarrass.
You can try.
No, so yesterday I started actually Sunday, and I climbed 30,000 feet on, a little over 30,000 feet. It took me 18 hours on the trainer, and they have a mountain route that's about a 6.5% grade. And I did that, and I never got off the bike. The whole 18 hours, I would run to the bathroom on a coast back down the hill and then just jump back out on the bike. But I had my time between the actual time and the ride time was 54 seconds. But I got into it a year ago. Went out to the Silver State 508, which hands down my favorite race. Love Chris Kosman's race and all his volunteers. And while I was out there, this craze had just started to happen in Australia, where George Mallory's grandson actually came up with the idea. He was wanting to train to climb Mount Everest, and he thought, well, how can I do this in Australia? There's nothing here like that. So what he decided to do is he was going to cycle the equivalent of it to get himself prepared to climb Mount Everest, was his theory. That all kind of died, and he did it, and he's still kind of he's the godfather of it. But there's another guy there by the name of Andy Van Bergner, who took it over, and there's a group called Hell's 500. And if you look up the website hells500.com, he's called the Keeper of the Cloud, and Everesting was born. And so all these Australians were doing it, and I'm an internet junkie. Anything cycling related, I go crazy over. But so while I was out at Silver State, I love climbing and everything. So last year when I went out, my first place I went to was Pikes Peak, and I climbed Pikes Peak. And I was thinking, how awesome would it be to Everest Pikes Peak? 6 times you'd have to do it. That was the hardest thing I've ever done once. But, on the way back, I'm thinking, we've got the infamous 6 Gap up here in Georgia, and those combined are about 11,000 feet of climbing, and there's 6 mountain passes. And I came home and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to try this Everesting thing and see how it is. But you know what I'm going to do, Tammy? I'm going to Everest both sides of 6 gaps. So I'm going to do all 12 gaps. And
wow.
You're crazy. and so I started them in April, and then the Nepal earthquake happened, and Hell's 500 was doing a fundraiser for the Nepal victims And they had asked people to do charity for it, and by promoting the Everesting climbs, try to raise money. So I stepped up and I said, I'll tell you what, Andy, I'll do 8 in June. And he said, 8? People don't do maybe 1 a year. I said, I'll do 8. So I did 8. I did 1 every other day, Lee, or every 4 days.
Wow.
And so I did all 12 gaps, and I actually went to another mountain here called Burnt Mountain and did another one there. So right now I've been in and out of the world record for Everesting. The record right now is 15, and we're constantly back and forth. We had this agreement. I wasn't going to do any while it was his winter, and I assumed he was going to do that for me, but he beat me to it. He didn't hold, so he's done 2 more. So he's ahead of me, but promise you, in the next 2 weeks, I will be ahead. I'm planning on going to RAAM, holding the record. It's something we jostle back and forth, but it's really fun. Those things started me just fantastic training for RAAM. They're not easy to do, obviously. It's all about pace. It's riding at night. All conditions, because you're going from the heat of the day to the frigid cold of the night. Here, when I was doing them last April, it wasn't unusual for it to be 85 and then get down in the 20s at night. So you got to be prepared. I did it all on my own. I had no crew or anything. But it just really, really preps you. Night riding, as you know, Lee, it's just a different animal. And
I never liked it.
Yeah, it's you feel slower. In theory, you are slower. Because of the density of the air and everything. I don't know how true that is, but someone told me that. But I fell in love with doing those for that reason. And and not to mention, it just makes you strong as hell. And no climb to me is intimidating. I've done Mount Evans, Pikes Peak. There's a book by a guy by the name of John Summerson who put out a book called The Complete Book of Climbing. And it rates all of the top climbs in the U.S. And I've done about 35 of that 100 that are on that list, and I'm hell bent I'm going to do them all before I no longer can.
Well, Ray, I want to get on to RAAM and then on to your charitable, because that's really the reason we're here.
Yeah.
And, hey, everybody, don't go away, because I've got a very important thing to talk about with Ray's charity. So let's just talk a little bit about you're going to be in RAAM 2016, correct, as a soloist?
That's right. That's right. I got my number. They actually issued the numbers yesterday. I think I'm number 555. I'm doing it, Lee, on behalf of the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Ironically, last October when I came home from my wife told me that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. You talk about the world caving in and everything not matter anymore. That was it. I was just in shock.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. And so after it all set in, I felt so helpless. She's stronger than I could ever be. And I was like, I've got to do something. And, so I decided that I would do this. I researched the various breast cancer, agencies, if you will, or charitable, agencies. And what took me back with Breast Cancer Research Foundation is they basically don't spend a penny on admin. It's nothing. It's like 4 or 5% of what the proceeds they get go back to funneling salaries or anything like that. So truly all is going to research. So I said, that's what I want to do. My wife went through her operation in November and then completed radiation treatments in January. And right now, thank God, it appears everything is okay. She was stage 1 or 1A, which is very early.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I kept saying, darn it, Tammy, you've got to go and get a test. You've got to get a test. And she works and she's like, I'll get to it, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And before you know it, whoa, you know, she had it. And so originally I looked at it and said, you know, I want to try and raise a ton of money for breast cancer research. And then I did a 1,000-mile charity ride on Zwift. And we raised $5,000 on Zwift that day. I rode 1,000 miles in like 59 hours on the trainer. Had all these people coming on during the ride and saying, wow, my mom had breast cancer, or my sister had breast cancer, a loved one had breast cancer. You know, kudos to you. You know, this is awesome what you're doing. And it kind of hit me where it was like, you know, if I can get one person to get off the bike and go to their mother or go to their wife and say, go get a mammogram, will you? I will have achieved what I wanted to achieve. Absolutely. You know, I kidded around with my wife. I said, look, when I turned 50, I didn't want a colonoscopy, but I had to go. You know, all you got to do is go and be touched. It's not near as bad. Trust me. You know, you know, I think my wife kind of felt she was invincible because, you know, her family, the genetics are, you know, they live into their 90s.
Yeah.
And so I think she was kind of lulled to a false sense of security. But one of the things that's just rung out, it's 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with some form of breast cancer. It's alarming. And so, you know, my cause is to just spread this awareness as best I can. I'm going to have both my RV as well as my follow vehicle. It's all going to be wrapped in Breast Cancer Research Foundation, you know, logos, as well as the awesome sponsors that have stepped up to help. You know, I plan on giving away at every one of the aid stations. I don't know if you can see these little breast cancer research mugs. I'm giving one of these.
Yeah, we can see that.
It's got the breast cancer research on one side and the Race Across America on the other. I'm going to give that to as many of the people staffing each one of those time stations as I can.
Yeah, put my name on one of those, Ray.
I am. I promise you I will. You know, I want, you know, we're going to have the little pink ribbons for decals. I want to go through, hopefully I make it through all those stations, but I want to be able to go through all those stations and leave a legacy to these people where, you know, they can go home and say, wow, look, I got this mug. By the way, honey, have you had a mammogram?
Absolutely.
You know, that's really the whole idea behind it. So my crew will be toting several boxes of coffee mugs and ribbons, but they don't mind. Which actually, Lee, if I can digress a little, the crew I've built is just, it's phenomenal. It's an international one, courtesy of Zwift. I've got 3 people from the United Kingdom, 1 from Finland, 1 from Mexico, and oh gosh, I'm probably 1 from Italy and 2 from the U.S.
Great. Well, listen, Ray, I know you have a donation page where people can donate to your cause. And as we were talking before we went on the air, these locators for these donation sites get awfully long. And there's hardly any point in me putting one up on the screen because they'd be hard to copy. But what we're going to do is we're going to put in the show notes right below the video a link to that donation page so people can click on it. That's the best way to do it. If you're watching the show, if you're watching the show on YouTube, or if you're watching it on one of the websites that embed the show, that link won't be there. But if you would like to donate a little something to, or a lot of something for that matter, you'll take large donations, won't you, Ray?
Yeah, I'll take.
You'll accept.
Yes, I'd be happy with $1. It doesn't matter. It's
okay.
you know.
Go to the OhioRAAMShow.com, which ought to be showing below my. And it wasn't there. I got turned on, but I'll put that link elsewhere. Go to OhioRAAMShow.com, find the show, and right below the video there'll be a link there that you can click on and make a donation to the cause of the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. Is that correct, Ray?
That's correct, Lee. And I'm going to embarrass you because I whiffed on this call twice. Once I had a brutal flu virus, and then the other time I was driving and was brain dead. And you were very, very passionate about making sure the story about doing this for breast cancer was told. So I appreciate your persistence and assistance in helping to get the story out there.
Well, as I've said often before, the charitable activities of our teams wasn't the original intent of this show, but it wasn't very long into it when we become aware of the fact that this is something we can do. And so that's become a major part of our mission. And just you sort of allude to the same thing that Maria Parker has said so often. And when her sister had brain cancer, she says, "I can't do much, but I can ride my bike fast." And I think that's become a kind of a theme of a lot of people.
Yeah, you want to try and contribute in some way, and yet life goes on as well. And so I really am passionate about trying to make it where it's proactive, and have people able to prevent something from happening rather than post. So this is the best way to get the story out, I think. By the way, one of my crew members is a breast cancer survivor. Just fantastic woman, ex-military woman. She has nothing other than positive thoughts. It's amazing how strong she is.
Well, Ray, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I have to thank you for your persistence, because I know that it takes some time out and some planning around your training activities and all the other things you got going on. We really appreciate that. We wish you the very best of luck, Ray, in RAAM 2016. You'll be riding, is it in the 50-59 age category? Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah. I probably should have waited 1 year and aged up, so I could have had a little more time.
and a little better chance at taking your category too, maybe. But we wish you the best. We will be looking for you here in Ohio. We're here 24 hours a day, Ray. And so no matter when you come through, there's a couple time stations here is going to be ringing their cowbells and giving you a shout and a clap. So good luck to you. Good luck to all the riders out there. Hey, Ray, thanks a lot for being with us today.
Well, I really enjoyed it, Lee. And again, I'm in having the interest.
Thanks again, Ray, for taking time out to visit with us, and we wish you well as you go into this adventure, and we hope that you raise a ton of money for the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. We want to thank all of you who support the show, particularly those who give us a like or a plus on social media, who give us a retweet. Those of you who share with your followers help not only get the message out about the show, but you also get the message out about the wonderful sport of ultracycling and the race across America. We again invite you to visit the website, OhioRAAMShow.com. There's a place there where you can leave your comments. We always read the comments, and sometimes if there's questions, we are happy to reply. There's also a place there where you can leave your email address if you'd like to have notifications of future shows. No one else will get those emails. They're just for us alone. And also on the show, you'll find links to a lot of information about the race across America, about ultracycling. And with that, we're going to say goodbye.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.